What's going on, squad? This is a quick recap video of by far one of boxing's biggest months. July 2023 kicked off with Anderson versus Martin. This was an epic battle. Anderson, the young blood in the heavyweight division. Martin, I think Martin was about 36-37 in this fight, but let's check out some highlights real quick.
That jab away. So that's what you're seeing right there.
Because if you've got a jab, I've got a better jab, and there's that Martin trying to set up that on the foot.
Now, like I said earlier, this was a great fight. Anderson's still young in the game. He was just moving straight back in a straight line too much. But besides that, this was a great fight. Let's go back to some more highlights.
Of Charles Martin, and then steps on the gas.
A chance to think, set up his game plan, and in the meantime...
There's a quick work.
Yeah, but heavyweights don't need to be chiseled.
For the experience of Charles Martin.
Last minute switch too, Dre. Last minute switch as well.
Ooh, big left hand there from Martin, who says the fight's not over until the final bell rings, and all great.
Right there towards the end just shows the veteran experience of Martin, knowing that the fight's not over until that final bell rings, and Anderson got a little bit comfortable and paid the price for it. But regardless of which, I think this is going to be a great learning experience for Anderson. Martin still showing that he still has some fire left, so he can go as far as he wants to in the game. And of course, like I said, Anderson kicked off this month. I'm sorry, Martin and Anderson kicked off this month with a bang. And again, my bad, last month with a bang. So the next big fight, in my opinion, for the month of July 2023, which again, boxing had a huge month last month, but it's going to be the Ennis versus Vila fight. I feel like not enough people knew about this fight, especially because I believe this ended up being a #1 contender fight as well, because the winner of this fight became the mandatory of whoever won between Spence and Crawford, which was also in last month, but it was at the end of last month. What I mean by mandatory opponent is I believe he became the mandatory for whoever was to retain the WBC belt, if I'm not mistaken. So if Spence would have won the fight, I think he would have became Spence's mandatory. And then, of course, if Crawford would have won the fight, I think he would have became Crawford's mandatory. I'm speaking this way just in case you didn't see it, because I'm going to show you the highlights at the end of this video. But if you saw it, you already know who he's the mandatory of. Now, with that little information out there, let's get to the highlights, because that's what we're here for. Athleticism was a big part of this fight, but I think, honestly, boxing IQ really shined through this fight when you rewatch it. But here's some more highlights. The shot selection that Ennis displayed during this fight was brilliant. So, just in my opinion, I think boxing IQ was very, very underrated for this fight. And I think if you rewatch it, you'll actually give it more credit than what you probably originally did when you first watched the fight. The next big fight, in my opinion, for the month of July in the year 2023 was Baumgartner versus Lertati 2. I thought this fight should have been promoted so much more. And ironically enough, it actually turned out to be a really good competitive fight. Yeah, here's some highlights. Check it out.
Charge.
And this is a high stakes fight. You can see Medusa, she knows if she wins this fight, she could really change her life.
I know, y'all are like, what in the world? Baumgartner was annihilating her in those opening highlights. Just keep watching the highlights. I got you. Keep watching the highlights. The fight turned out to be competitive.
I mean, Lertati, busy as a bee, just moving, whereas Baumgartner's just kind of sitting, stalking, waiting.
I know. Again, y'all gonna be like, but maybe 2 of those jabs hit, X. Not a lot of those jabs hit. It's the fact that they went in there and put it out all on the line. Again, this fight was really good. Baumgartner really emptied her tank trying to finish this girl. At least that's what it looked like. Here's a highlight of it. You make your own decision. Here's a highlight.
And you know what? When we look at
Not good body language. Not good body language. Out comes the bell piece.
And Alicia is so accurate, saving energy, but landing every single blow.
If you're not watching women's boxing, I don't know what you're doing, because over the past, what I'm gonna say, about 7 to 8 years, in my opinion, women's boxing has made a huge comeback. But to each their own. I'm just letting you know that them women, they get in there and they bang. So The next big fight came another undisputed fight. I apologize. I haven't been telling y'all the importance behind these fights. The last fight that I just showed you highlights of the Baumgartner fight, that was a undisputed fight. Basically, when you're undisputed, that means you hold every major title in that weight class. That's a huge accomplishment because boxing right now has like too many belts, to be honest with you. But at the end of the day, I'm glad that some people are daring to be great and going out there and trying to capture all the belts, so that way when you say the word champion, you only think of one name instead of like 5 and 6 different names. So this was a undisputed championship fight against Futon and Inoue. Inoue has been killing the game overseas in Japan, and Futon is a beast in his own right. I mean, undisputed champ himself. He was willing to put everything on the line himself to go up there and fight him. He actually went to Japanese soil for this boxing match. This I felt like wasn't promoted like it should have been either, because this was a huge fight. But yeah, here's the highlights.
A stab jab down to the body. Foden has no answer for it. And the reason why Inoue can get there quick with that.
So the name of this game for this match was actually athleticism. There's some things about Inoue's past that I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm gonna be the first one to bring him up, I guess. Him coming up about 4 weight divisions. He was the smaller man in this fight, but he's knocked out almost everybody he's fought. I'm sorry, that's kind of suspect to me. I just don't see that all the time. We've had great fighters in the past, like Manny Pacquiao. Again, unfortunately, he's been popped for PEDs too, and other performance enhancement things. So I'm just not too sure about this one. But at the end of the day, it was still a great boxing match, and I take nothing away from either fighter until, you know, of course, the truth comes to light. But here's some more highlights.
That jab is his Foden has a wide stance. His base is so wide. It's really hard to get in and out. Oh, right hand hurts him. Oh, it feels right.
You talking about a flying gazelle punch. But again, all jokes aside though, because you don't play with boxing at all. Like seriously, you really don't. Any combat sport. But this is why I say that we'll see as his career goes on, just what's going on. But yeah.
Fulton hurt badly. The monster on the attack, trying to claim 2 more belts as Fulton tried to grab the ropes, backed up into the corner. Here comes Inoue. That destructive, decisive power.
So once again, to be clear, I am not talking down on any fighter. I have the utmost respect for all fighters. I just have noticed that over the years of me being a boxing fan, that normally when somebody comes up in so much weight, something always comes out. Again, I'm not accusing a man of nothing or nothing. I'm just kind of stating what history has kind of already shown. But anywho, let's move on to the biggest match of the month, at least in my opinion. So I just want to go on record and say, this is another fight that I think was not promoted like it should have been promoted. I feel like the promoters really could have put their names out there a little bit more. But I get it to an extent. Let me make sure I say that. They're not those type of men. Errol Spence Jr. and Terrence Crawford, they're not disrespectful. Let's just be honest. They're just not idiots. So they're not going to come out and just speak any kind of way towards each other or each other's family. And I got nothing but respect for them two men. I wish more of us could have adopted that mentality once we get into that light. But let's get to the highlights. I know y'all here for the highlights. Let's get to the highlights. Game was the jab. Like seriously, this whole fight depended on the jab. And one fighter showed how superior they were with the jab, at least on this night. The next big factor of this fight was actually size. A lot of people were saying that Terrence Crawford was just too small for Errol Spence. And as you saw in that second highlight clip, he was the one actually pushing around Errol Spence in this fight. I never understood why people always talk about size when it comes down to somebody that has established themselves in a certain weight division, because it's not like Terrence Crawford just jumped up out of nowhere and said, oh yeah, I'm gonna just jump up to 147 pounds and just fight him overnight. He's been at this weight for years now, at least 5 years minimum. So that was interesting to me to always hear that debate. But regardless of which, this fight, even though it wasn't promoted the way I think it should have been promoted, it was still an amazing display of boxing IQ and skill. Again, all these fights are worth watching again, especially this fight. But yeah, this was my recap of the month of July 2023, one of the greatest boxing months ever in my opinion. Yeah, this was just an amazing month, and I know there's more to come in the future. At least I hope so, for the sport of boxing. But check back in with me later.